Welcome back to the Goal Line Stands 32 for 32 NFL Preview Series. I am Michael Lipinski. I am joined by Brett Halpern. And Brett, do you have your Primanti Brothers sandwich ready, loaded up, French fries, coleslaw, chicken fingers on a sandwich, ready to go? Iron City beer, the whole 9 yards.
Absolutely. That sounds pretty good right now.
We are. It's not as good as you think it is. It's a very overrated.
It's like the cousin of the fat sandwich.
It is like the cousin of the fat sandwich. It's like that cousin that shows up at a party and you're kind of just like, what are they doing here kind of thing?
I think the thing is, I would prefer how the fat sandwich is in more of a hoagie / sub roll.
Yeah.
As opposed to white bread.
Yeah, I agree with you. Pittsburgh has a large Polish population. So some kielbasa and pierogies and some sauerkraut. I'm all in for it. We're talking Pittsburgh Steelers here on 32 for 32, our NFL preview series. Interesting year a year ago for Pittsburgh. Mediocre record says so. Obviously, there was issues at quarterback. It seemed like things were starting to unravel a little bit in Pittsburgh. They've always had the reputation of being a very, very good organization. Well ran, well respected. Cracks were forming a year ago.
Yeah, well, I think it was also coming off the Antonio Brown drama / saga, and then they get hurt, and there was a lot going on. And, I think there's some of the shine has worn off of, what's his name? Can you help me with their head coach right now? This is not good for a preview, but Mike Tomlin. Thank you.
Yeah, wow.
Yes. Wow, yeah. Well, they're like, wow,
hey,
we're watching these people preview Steelers. Yeah.
I was going to go no, but
I think some of the shine has worn off him a little bit. You go back a few years, the way they lost to the Jaguars in the divisional playoff game. So,
if you lose the locker room, Tomlin has always been very, very well respected. And it seemed like maybe a year ago he lost the locker room a little bit. It's the stuff that was coming out. It came off that way. Could be completely wrong, but it seemed that way.
I think the thing is, it's clear that Antonio Brown was handled and given some star treatment. It sounded that way also regarding training camp treatment and preferences that he got. So I think maybe that helped. It lost some respect with the rest of the guys. You go back to they were 8-8. In spite of everything they went through, in a weird way, the 8-8 was almost a success, and they almost made the playoffs.
Yeah,
in light of the fact that they were playing with quarterbacks who were less than stellar and not legitimate starters in this league.
Yep. Let's get into it. Let's take a look at the Steelers. So 2019, 8-8, second place in the North, and that's remarkable.
Yeah. I mean, it really was not. I personally have not gone through that as a Giant, where you had a starter just out the whole year, and you still managed to crawl or climb and crawl to an 8-8 record. But I have a feeling that by the end of that last game, while they were disappointed, due to the fact they didn't have Roethlisberger, the Steeler fans were generally okay with it as composed. If Roethlisberger was there, 8-8, that's a serious problem.
Yeah, you're right. And the quarterback obviously makes a difference. So you're probably looking at minimum 2 games, a 2-game, so you're 10-6 team at least.
Yeah, at least. So
let's run it down. Let's run it down who they've added, who they've lost. As you can see here, for the first time in a while, nothing there in the middle. No COVID-19 opt-outs for the Steelers.
Yeah, they're all in, at least from a COVID perspective. So in terms of the acquisitions, the first name on that list actually comes from the XFL, and Rutgers fans might remember this is Manalapan High's Saeed Blacknall, who was once a Rutgers commit. I feel like I'm doing this for every single preview, but yeah, it was a Rutgers commit that then decommitted and went to Penn State. Eric Ebron's a nice pickup. I think that he's resurrected his career a little bit. I hate to tell you, Steelers fans, Derek Watt is not quite as good as his brothers. Actually, he's really nowhere near as good. I'm not trying to shit on the guy. The other two are all pros. One's going to be a Hall of Famer, and this one, he's a serviceable fullback. But he's a Watt brother, so he's going to give it his all. That's just the way all the brothers are. Stefan Wisniewski, the journeyman interior offensive lineman. There's a good pickup, and Chris Wormley, I think, was a very nice pickup. He's a D end in a 3-4, but really, I kind of view him as more of he's an interior defensive lineman, but a good pickup from a divisional rival in the Baltimore Ravens. There's definitely a lot of departures. Some of them.
Before we get to the departures,
yeah,
Wisniewski is. I really like that as a pickup for the Steelers.
Yeah,
he fits what they do really well.
Yeah, blue collar guy, just gonna get after it. Absolutely, and also look, there's something to be. He's an incredibly valuable piece, which is I feel why, he's not an all pro, right? He's not a Pro Bowler, but I think because of the fact he could play both guard spots and play center very well, in a way, he travels from team to team year after year and helps out the interior of an offensive line.
And what do they do for the most part, those teams? They win Super Bowls. So, hey, maybe this is boding really well for the Steelers.
Yeah, he's doing well in that regard. There were a lot of departures. I would tell you that some of them were kind of just guys that they needed to part ways with that just either never lived up to the hype or, they found people who were better. Mark Barron is kind of a guy who actually came in, I believe he was actually the first ever NFL draft pick of Greg Schiano. Now that I think about it, came in as a safety, bulked up the linebacker, had some marginal success, but I think that his time has come and gone. Artie Burns and Sean Davis were both high draft picks by the Steelers. It just didn't work out. It was definitely time to part ways. I think actually the biggest miss, and we're going to talk more about this we get to the Philadelphia Eagles, in terms of biggest departures, is Javon Hargrave. Was a very underrated piece of this Steelers defense and played the nose tackle position and really just incredibly stout against the run and did a nice job there and set the tone so that the edge rushers were able to just tee off on the quarterback. So I think that that's going to be a key for the Steelers this year to find his replacement. Ramon Foster was a long-time piece in that offensive line, more on the tackle spot. Temple's Tyler Matakevich was a good special teams player, but not necessarily a starting quality linebacker. So I think he's replaceable. Roosevelt Nix was sort of getting a little bit long in the tooth, and Nick Vannett was a serviceable tight end. Obviously but I think they let go of some guys where it was time, particularly Mark Barron, Artie Burns, and Sean Davis.
Yeah, sometimes those departure lists look long, but there are certain guys where it's just your time is up, and so it's someone else's time. And
exactly.
That was the case here. Let's run down their draft. Okay.
Yeah, well, obviously they didn't have a first-round pick because of the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade, but based upon how Minkah played once he got to Pittsburgh, if you were, to tell Pittsburgh fans, in this particular draft that we're looking at right now, then the first round you'd have Minkah Fitzpatrick and the way he played, you would say it's a home run draft. So really, you have to, it's a lot of context there. I particularly the first two picks are players that I'm very intrigued with. Chase Claypool actually came out of British Columbia, Canadian guy, and played at Notre Dame. He ran exceptionally well at the combine. He's a very good possession receiver. I wonder if they're going to use him a little bit in the tight end position because he's close to 6'6" and about 235 pounds. So, I mean, if I were to just tell you, hey, Mike, I'm talking about a 6'6", 235-pound player who catches the ball, you're going to be like, oh, you mean a tight end. You're not going to think a receiver. So, I think that's an interesting piece that the Steelers really haven't had in a while. We're probably since Plaxico Burress. I mean, other than pass-catching tight ends, which, they've had a nice job of having those, the Heath Millers and others over the years. And also Alex Highsmith from UNC Charlotte, the 49ers. He's an intriguing outside linebacker, pass rush specialist who I think will really benefit watching guys like Bud Dupree and TJ Watt operate. And I think that, maybe not necessarily the first year, but afterwards, I think you're going to see a guy who can either come off the bench or start and get somewhere between 5 to 10 sacks a year. I'm that high on that guy. Kevin Dotson's an interesting one, the 4th-round offensive lineman in Louisiana. Real nasty. That's why I think he fits in with the Steelers. The Steelers, for all those years, have just been known as a physical team, right? Going back to the steel curtain and everything else, that's just how they are. And they all, no matter what, they always pride themselves on having a strong running game. And I think probably give it another year so he can learn more of the nuances of the offensive line play in the NFL. Kevin Dotson can definitely be a future starter for them. And then the 7th-round pick, Carlos Davis. There was he and his brother Khalil, who both knocked it out of the park in the combine. I mean, his brother ran, I believe it was either a sub 4.7 or like literally just a 4.7, and Carlos ran like a 4.81. Both of them at 6'1.5", 300 pounds. So very athletic. And look, as we talked about in previous episodes, you draft, sometimes you're drafting athletic traits when it comes to the 7th round, and he has enough of those where I think it would have justified an even higher pick. So I think he could potentially turn into a nice rotational piece. So all in all, even without a 1st-round draft pick, I think there's some decent pieces here.
For the Steelers, the big question mark, the elephant in the room, so to speak, is going to come from the quarterback position.
Yeah.
So let's get into it. 4 key questions for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2020. 1 and 2 are they're a two-parter here. So, 1, how much does Big Ben have left in the tank?
I think, from all reports, he is rehabbed completely. I think he has enough for, 1 or 2 seasons left. In a way, I think maybe the year away from the team, even though it was an injury, may have actually helped him because he wasn't beat down physically and had to deal with the regular bumps and bruises of having to go through an entire season.
So then I guess we're rolling right into number 2. Is this Ben's swan song in Pittsburgh? Do you see this being the end of Ben Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh, or does he have the 2 years and then he walks away?
I think it's definitely going to depend upon how I think he has enough for 2 years, but if they don't make the playoffs this year, and given where they are, maybe with and how much draft capital they may or may not have, I could see them parting ways after this year.
It's weird to think of that. I mean, obviously it happens.
Yeah.
But there's certain franchises that just have quarterbacks and they have guys that are always there.
Yeah.
And this is one of them. Sooner or later, I guess. It's one of those things. Father Time is always undefeated.
Yep, absolutely.
JuJu Smith-Schuster, is he Batman or is he Robin?
I think he's Robin. Now, you can't judge entirely from last year because, as we talked about, the quarterback play was less than stellar because it wasn't Ben Roethlisberger. But obviously the year before, when he had the great numbers, Antonio Brown was there. And I just get the feeling, based upon the games when Antonio Brown was not playing, back when Antonio Brown was on the Steelers, and from last year, I think he has difficulties being viewed as the first and as the primary target, which is why I would call him a tremendous Robin, but I don't think he's a great Batman.
I think he's a Robin that a lot of teams would love to have.
Oh, yeah, I'd take him in a second. But
yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Question number 4. Can this defense put this team on their back? The Steelers always had that kind of reputation.
Yeah.
Can they do it?
I don't think this is the steel curtain, and I don't think this is quite the same defense as they had during the early 2000s, and even up to their Super Bowl run where they lost against the Packers. With the James Harrisons, Lamar Woodleys, Troy Polamalu's. But look, they went 8-8. Again, I go back to last year. They went 8-8, and a lot of those games were low-scoring games. Under 20 points, a lot of field goals. And they did that without an offense. I mean, there were some of those games, those quarterback performances were terrible. I mean, they might as well just run like a single wing. So to me, I think it is good enough for them this defense is good enough for them to get to the playoffs with at least sufficient quarterback play. And I think a healthy or semi-healthy Ben Roethlisberger gives you sufficient quarterback play.
I would agree. It's got to be better than what they had a year ago.
Yeah.
If you've been following along on our 32 for 32 NFL preview series, we will provide our overall predictions at the end of this here run coming up before NFL kickoff when we do our big preview show. If you are enjoying this program, we would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, throw a big thumbs up in there, drop a comment, say hello, follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Put in there at GL Stand Show, and you will be able to find us. We return tomorrow with the Baltimore Ravens.